So I'm going to discuss one more section in Deleuze and Guattari's 1,000 Plateaus here. I do plan on doing other videos about the other sections. However, there's only a few that are really important to me in order to move forward with my book that I just want to get out of the way and done videos about, because basically I'm trying to read and reread everything. This is basically a reread for me. The whole book is, but I have been trying to read and reread everything that I feel like might be necessary to start writing my book. And I've discussed that book, so I won't bring it up. In this video, I want to discuss Deleuze and Guattari's section in the 1,000 Plateaus called Micropolitics and Segmentarity. And I guess I'm going to try and find my little illustration that I have here. I did a little illustration about it, but I don't know maybe if it's even worth showing, I guess. Alright, here we go. So to sort of talk about this a little bit, segmentarity is, I guess, referring to how everything is segmented in some way or another. Whether everything is macro-conceptualized in some way, where the state is basically putting everything in some hierarchical order with which there can be resonance, and how it can basically sort of rule everything else with this idea of resonance. Or is it more of a supple way? And I'll discuss that a little bit too. Basically, segmentarity means that everything is segmented in some way or another, and there's three different kinds of segmentarity. One is circular, and this basically is referring to lines of flight, or basically how they talk about assemblages and multiplicities, and how a multiplicity, which is basically something that is multiple in many ways, it's very multiple, how there are many assemblages. An assemblage is a bunch of lines of flight, or a bunch of flows gathered into one certain context. And the plane of immanence is a plateau, and that is which kind of in some way vaguely encloses this whole enormous body without organs that the world really is. And I guess it's probably bad to think about the world as a body without organs, but because things are bodies without organs, I had discussed that a little bit. But let me sort of try to get at this. In a body without organs, it doesn't lack organs, but it lacks organization. It lacks being a organism. It lacks hierarchical organization or real organization of any kind. It basically has this sort of stratifying and destratifying, or deterritorializing and reterritorializing, and basically what happens is lines of flight go through these bodies without organs, or assemblages, or whatever you want to call them, and these things that go through them and pass through these bodies without organs, they are segmented in certain ways, meaning that they are not this one always the same thing that is always just going a certain way. It's segmented and changes. And there are two different ways in which there are three different ways that a segmentarity can be. It can be circular, linear, and binary. Circular is, of course, when it makes a circle in some way or another. Binary is when it goes off into dualisms, as in old, young, absent, present, same, different, and just choose all the way down. So you have the circular, the linear, and the binary. However, there are two kinds of ways in which segmentarity can be. It can be in a rigid way, or it can be in a supple way. And rigid meaning that it's hierarchical, it's organized with one. Well, when it comes to the circular form of segmentarity, it's all these circular segments gathered around one all-seeing eye, and that's a macropolitical, hierarchical, organized way where resonance can occur and how this one thing can control what happens in the rest. And linear is very similar in the rigid way, in that it's like that, and binary is always just choose, and nothing can ever change from that. Hot, cold, young, old, same, different, down, down, down. And in the supple way, I guess the supple way is more of what Deleuze and Guattari are sort of hinting at is better, given the idea between the tree and the rhizome, which becomes very evident in the introduction. The tree is where there's a root. It always grows upward and upward and upward, whereas the rhizome goes horizontally, and bulbs can break off and it can go like this, or go like this, and all around it can go in any one way. So it could be going like this for a while, then go like this, and just like there's no way of predicting where a rhizome can go, and that's basically the foundation of their philosophy. I don't want to use that word foundation, but it's basically a integral part of their philosophy, that is the rhizome. And thinking about segmentarity on the supple level, where, as they say, when it comes to circular segments, there's n number of eyes in the sky looking at you, say a bunch of different circles with all different eyes. It's not organized, it's not concentric, where in the rigid way all the circles are concentric. These circles don't have to be concentric, they are not organized. So this is kind of a little sketch I did about it, and I'll explain the macropolitics and the micropolitics later, well, soon in this video. But as you can see, the big circle with a bunch of little circles in it, that's the rigid, and the bottom there below with all the bunch of eyes, that's the supple way. And the linear way, that means it can just go like wherever. It's still lines, but it's segmented lines, actually segmented lines. And basically binary is where there's tons and tons and tons of dualisms, and possibly not even dualisms, but pluralisms or whatever. And the rigid form has to do with macropolitics. Macropolitics being a certain state, I guess, having this hierarchical structure of everything else and governing everything else, and there being that resonance between this very, very structured thing. And that is what the war machine and the nomad, according to Deleuze and Guattari, are against. They are trying to resist such a state and just break it up. And that will lead to war, and that will lead to peace, and whatever. This is very, very pertinent to my book that I'm writing, which is why I'm getting so excited about it. So sorry about that. But whereas there's macropolitics, which means big, enormous state-like structures governing everything else below it, is a hierarchical thing where resonance can occur. Where there's also micropolitics, where there's localized things. There's no one structured hierarchical thing governing everything else, like with the n number of eyes in the circular supple segmentarity. There's a bunch of localized eyes which don't really govern anything, and there's no real resonance, but it's a very unstructured thing. Same with the linear and the binary in that way as well. And that applies to politics in a very simple way, and in my opinion, that micropolitics is better than macropolitics. However, everything is political according to them, everything is political. However, with Derrida, things aren't necessarily political, and he kind of, in Derrida's book, the Politics of Friendship, he sort of deconstructs the whole political itself, as does George Agamben. Well, in many works, he does that, including the Homo Sacer. So, a lot of things are going on here, and I think if any peace on any level is to possibly occur, it would have to be on a micro-political level. And I think, I don't know, I have a lot of arguing to do and thinking to do about this, and as to how this pertains to peace, and sort of connect that in with what I'm saying, because I think it has a very big bearing on what I'm saying. I think that Deleuze and Guattari's philosophy in this book have a lot to say about peace and war apart from the war machine. However, the two are related. Let me know your thoughts on this. Sorry, I went really fast. Thanks.